The Justice Department is considering pursuing additional charges against Derek Chauvin for kneeling on the neck of a black individual. This is a different case from the one that he was just found guilty of murder, and that's the George Floyd case. In this case, we're talking about a teenage boy who, yes, is black, who he knelt on the neck of back in 2017 for 17 minutes. The Root reports that the Department of Justice is considering the possibility of charging the ex-Minneapolis cop in connection to this 2017 incident where he allegedly knelt on a black teenager for a whopping 17 minutes. Prosecutors were apparently presented with multiple videos of this case, of this incident, and they showed it to the judge in the George Floyd trial, but the defense unfortunately succeeded in arguing that any type of brutality that Derek Chauvin might have engaged in any other interaction other than with George Floyd should not be presented as evidence in the case. So they weren't able to use that in the case, but now we're learning about it. And apparently the video is so brutal, so awful that the DOJ is thinking about pursuing additional criminal charges against him in the federal criminal case.
So I wanted to quickly say, the judge did not allow Chauvin's pass to go into the trial. Remember, he had 18 complaints against him before George Floyd. None of that got in. The guy was a serial abuser. And on the other hand, they allowed George Floyd's pass to come in, including criminal charges. So the person who died, the victim, got smeared in the trial, but Chauvin was protected in the trial. He still got convicted, thank God. But that's why sometimes cops get let off, because our system goes, oh no, the beloved, cherished cops don't tell people about how they maul people on a regular basis. But if they murdered a black guy, tell him what a dangerous criminal he is. He might have smoked pot once. So there's many things wrong with the system, and that's one of them. But of course, the main point here is, if they had just done something about Chauvin back when he attacked that poor kid viciously, George Floyd would be alive today. But they never do anything to hold cops accountable. He didn't get tried, nothing happened to Chauvin. Nothing happened in 18 of the times he abused people, including this horrific story we're gonna tell you more about.
Exactly, so let me give you context for what happened, and also let me be clear that we do not have any footage of this encounter, but we do have descriptions of what this encounter was like and how it went down. So it all started when a woman had called the cops on her teenage son. There was some sort of domestic dispute, and Derek Chauvin, along with one other cop, showed up to the scene and demanded that the teenage boy get down to the ground. When the boy refused to do so, Chauvin immediately became violent, according to accounts of what's in the video or within the encounter. Within seconds, Chauvin hit the teenager with his flashlight, grabbed the teenager's throat, hit him again with the flashlight, and then applied a neck restraint, causing the child to lose consciousness and go to the ground. Chauvin, and this is according to the state prosecutor who clearly has seen the video, Chauvin and the other officer placed the teenager in the prone position and handcuffed him behind his back while the teenager's mother pleaded with them not to kill her son and told her son to stop resisting. About 8 minutes in, Chauvin moved his knee to the teenager's upper back and left it there for 9 more minutes. To give you a sense of just how vicious he was with this teenager. And so this is something, again, that was presented to the judge. The judge said that this is not admissible in the case with George Floyd. And so as we're learning more, I'm happy to know that the Justice Department is at least considering using this as a reason to add charges in the, again, criminal lawsuit on a federal level in regard to Derek Chauvin and his policing.
The most important part of the story is, why did Chauvin do something so brutal that it was so brutal that only 33% of Trump supporters thought he was innocent? That's how bad it was, okay? Now that's a giant number and it's way higher than the rest of us, but still, he lost even a majority of Trump supporters with how brutal he acted. So why did he do that? Because he had done it apparently many times before, and there was no accountability. It's not, the cops, the rest of the cops, if he was such a bad apple, and his bosses never said, oh my God, that's outrageous. You're fired, you're suspended, you're this, you're that. No, they just said, oh, bravo, nice job, way to bring the guy in. Way to crush that guy. Now they pretend to be outraged. Don't pretend. You let him do that over and over again. You probably very, very, very likely encourage them to do that.
Yeah.
And so now we know he did it for 17 minutes and you didn't even fire him. And so you probably didn't even come close to firing him. I don't know if you gave him a medal or whatever. So that entire department, especially his bosses, are 100% guilty. If I was his boss and I heard what he did in that incident, I would of course fire him, but that's why I wouldn't be in policing in America, because if you're not the most brutal person you've ever met, you don't get to be a cop in America. And so now, look, more on this. The mom calls and says, the son and daughter are threatening me, so she needs help. So look, in the beginning when the cops show up, you have sympathy for the cops because they're in a tough situation, right? But they lose the sympathy instantly because instead of asking questions, what's going on? Can we separate you guys? Is everything okay? First thing Chauvin goes to is takes a flashlight, hits him over the head.
Twice.
And he got, of course, he starts bleeding. He needed to be taken to the hospital. He got stitches. Later, as he's kneeling on him, the kid starts bleeding from the ear. The mom who called the cops, then is, as Anna read to you, she's pleading, please don't kill my son. Now, do you understand why black people are afraid to call the cops?
Yes, so, okay, let's stop there. I have so many things to say. Remind me about Maxine Waters, because I wanna make a point about her statements prior to us learning about what the verdict was in the Derek Chauvin trial. But this is the disconnect that I think many people have a difficult time understanding. And of course, I'm specifically referring to people who do not believe that there's a problem with policing in this country. If I call the cops, if I personally call the cops, I know that it is very likely that they are gonna help me out with whatever it is. I know that they're not going to in any way threaten my life. I know that this is actually a public service for people like me. But it is not the case for many people in this country who are of a certain socioeconomic status and of course of a certain race. That's the reason why some people in this country do believe in the notion of defunding the police and redirecting those resources, our resources, the resources that we as a community put into the police department, redirecting that money toward social workers, toward people who actually have formal training in mental health. So for instance, in Loveland, Colorado, when Walmart employees make a big deal out of an elderly woman with dementia forgetting to pay less than $14 worth of merchandise, right? You don't call cops who are gonna brutalize her. You'll have resources readily available to bring someone onto the scene who knows how to deal with someone who might be suffering from dementia, for instance. So that kind of thinking makes sense. It's just that people have to sit down and actually think about it in a nuanced way rather than immediately jump to hyperbolic conclusions about what people are asking for. There is a divide, there is a disconnect, because oftentimes people only see situations from their own lived experience and perspective. And just because the cops have been great to you doesn't mean that's true of how cops operate in other communities.
Yeah, our viewers actually had a lot of great points to make that are similar to what you're saying. Let me go to Squirrel Squad first. So these are from our member section. In Germany, 269 people died due to policing between 1990 and 2017. If Germany would be the size of America, that'd be about 1,000 dead people in 28 years. We have 1,000 dead people from police shootings and killings every year. 28-to-1 ratio, and Germany is actually nowhere near the best in Europe in this category. So a normal, middle of the road European country, we're 28 times worse on cop killings, cops killing citizens. Is there out of control crime in Germany? Not at all. You don't have to do policing the way that we do it. We choose to do it, because from our perspective, the police are supposed to be right-wing and crazed and never allowed to be disrespected. And they will, I mean, look, imagine any other profession works that way. Oh, you're a doctor. Oh, you disrespected me, you didn't agree with it. Boom, he slaps you across the face. People are like, what the hell are you doing, right? But we let cops do it all the time and they get celebrated. Oh, you slapped him across the face. Oh, great job, way to be. Oh, you didn't kill him, next time. right? And Jess says, my dad was a high school history teacher before he took up a job as a corrections officer. My dad was a very different person before and after he became a corrections officer, and not for the better. So please do not tell me that the system does not change people. We train them to be this vicious. Normal human beings are not this vicious. And then finally, Derek Murphy says, Derek Chauvin is just another symptom of this corrupt and at times overtly racist policing system. One more thing for me, the sleeper hold that he did on that young kid, that is extremely dangerous. That it cuts off oxygen to your brain and it could cause brain damage. Willy-nilly does it, nobody cares, nobody holds him accountable, and later he cuts off oxygen in somebody else's brain and they die.
By the way, we read members' comments. So if you want to get your comment read on the show, become a member. You can click on that join button if you're watching on YouTube, or you can go to tyt.com/join.
Maxine Waters.
Yes, so I wanted to make one point about Maxine Waters. You and I got into a debate about whether or not Maxine Waters should have commented on the trial the way she did prior to the verdict. And I said that she should not have done that. This is exactly why I believe she should not have done that, right? Because remember, the defense asked for a mistrial as a result of a US Congresswoman weighing in on the trial before a verdict had been reached. And the judge luckily said, no, I will not consider this a mistrial, but was clearly angered by what Maxine Waters had to say, and then suggested, maybe you can bring it up upon appeal. The fact that the judge was presented with that video of a teenager being brutalized by Derek Chauvin in the same way, actually, depending on what the video actually contains and what we know from the description, possibly worse than what he did to George Floyd that day. The fact that the judge saw that and was like, no, it's irrelevant to the case. It's irrelevant to the case. I'm not allowing that. Like, the system is so biased against justice. And that's why, it's not that I disagreed with what Maxine Waters had to say. It's just that they'll look for anything to let Derek Chauvin off. And that's why I was honestly terrified that it would be successfully used against justice in this case. So far it has not, but the defense has tried.
Let me say one last thing on this. Remember all the Fox News hosts, including Tucker Carlson, who said after the trial, basically he only got convicted because the country was afraid of black people rioting.
Yeah.
Okay, they look at the stuff that Chauvin does and they think, that's our boy, atta boy. The only reason to get convicted is because black people are so violent. He sees the violence of the murder, and now he'll see this story and he'll probably think, atta boy. Now it's public. Now that it's public, they're gonna have to do something about it when we were having such a great time abusing black people behind the scenes. And meanwhile blaming them for it by claiming that it was their violence we're concerned about. So that's the right wing in America, and that's partly what's led to this policing. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.